let's talk about meal planning. What does this really look like? We're talking about all these different nutrition and foods and all that, but what does it really sound like? So I'm going to read my list of just some of the foods you can make with all these ingredients. Pots, pans, plates, power bowls, soup, salad, sides, sweets, stews, stir fries, stacks, scrambles, skewers, sushi, sauces, sautés, sheet pans, slaws, steaks, stuffed veggies, chilies, chowders, casseroles, curries, lasagna, loaded potatoes, loaves, pastas, panini, paellas, pancakes, pilaus, pizza, polenta, pestos, puddings, pot stickers, purees, bisques, bakes, barbecue, biryani, burritos, burgers, hummus, dips, dressings, wraps, rolls, ramen, risottos, roast, tacos, tostadas, toast, tofu, tempeh, trail mix, tarts, tagine, dumplings, fajitas, masalas, kebabs, quiches, wings, ratatouille, and so much more. I'd love to hear what you want to add to that list, but there is no lack when it comes to eating a plant-based diet. The two things I hear, the two concerns or obstacles for a lot of people to transition this way is that it's so difficult or that it's so expensive. So I want to spend a little minute just kind of debunking that. Any diet, no matter what you are eating, has a wide, broad spectrum of simplicity and complexity, as well as affordability and more gourmet, expensive, fancy eating out type of a thing. And in terms of ease and how to prepare, it could be super, super simple, and it could be super gourmet and more challenging, with more advanced techniques, if you will. But there's a very, very broad diversity of gray area in between that. And so I like to think about it like this. On an omnivorous diet, right, you can eat on the very simple side, like you could have a PB&J, or you could have a tuna fish sandwich, or just an omelet, right? Or eggs, right? Fried eggs and whatever you make at home. That's really super simple and really affordable and easy. But then you could also go out and you could do really affordable, and you can go to the dollar menu at the fast food restaurant and get, a whole meal, a beef burrito or a burger and fries on a dollar menu. So it's really simple or cheap. But you could also go out and you could have a lobster dinner or a filet mignon, or you can make that at home. There's so much you could do on an omnivorous diet, but then let's flip that and look at that from a plant-based perspective. So at home, you can make a very simple rice and beans dish for very affordable. You could throw frozen rice into the microwave and open up a can of beans for really, really cheap and really, really delicious, and pour over some salsa or some hot sauce and have a full meal just like that. Frozen vegetables, all that, super simple. But you could also get a little bit more exotic. You can cook from home and make like a truffled ravioli, or, with a cashew cream sauce, or a portobello Wellington, mushroom Wellington. Or you can go out to a vegan restaurant. There are so many vegan restaurants, like I said, all over the world that have all sorts of more gourmet and more expensive foods that you could buy. So there is no, it doesn't matter if you're omnivorous or if you're a vegetarian, or if you're on a plant-based diet. You can eat this way very simply and very affordably. And ironically, maybe the simpler foods tend to be the healthier foods. People call them the simple staples. I like to call them simple staples. They've been known as quote unquote peasant foods, like those real basic foods, like, beans and rice again, or soup, just like the stone soup, really simple ingredients. That tends to be the healthiest anyways. So that's a good way to think about it, that it doesn't have to be difficult and it doesn't have to be expensive. And it can. If you want to branch out and learn some new skills and get more creative in the kitchen, you absolutely can. There's so many options and everything in between. Often I'm asked about how do you keep your kitchen stocked. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit today, because it's, preparation is really key. If you plan to fail, you fail to plan. That's a really good saying I love to use. I break it up into fresh, flavors, and foundationals in terms of how you stock your kitchen. So the fresh foods are things you need to buy more frequently because they don't last very long in your kitchen, like your vegetables, the bulbs, the cruciferous veggies, of course, the leafy greens, and then like potatoes, the underground storage organs. Sprouts don't tend to last very long. Mushrooms don't tend to last very long, and fruits don't tend to last very long. So those are things that you probably need to buy more frequently, maybe once or maybe twice in a week. But you could time these trips based on what you're going to make. So if you really plan that, I'm a big fan of lists. I think lists are extraordinarily helpful. So if I'm going to make these 3 recipes in the next few days, you just write your shopping list, you go to the store, and you could just kind of time it. And then there's a category of flavors. So this is kind of a broad category of sauces and seasonings that you could buy as needed. So I keep a list. When I run out of things, I have a list on my notes on my phone, and I will just add it to my list when I run out or I'm getting low on something, especially the things I use most often. But what I always have in my kitchen, almost always, are sauces like a marinara sauce, an oil-free marinara sauce. I always have an abundance of salsas, hot sauce. I have a whole cabinet filled with hot sauce. I actually posted a video sharing my plethora of hot sauces that I have because I love to use hot sauce. Barbecue sauce, if you use that, all those different mustards and mustard sauces, ketchup. You could make all of your own, by the way, if you like. Sometimes they're super easy, and they're definitely, you can control the ingredients. You can make them very low in sodium and low in oil if you make them yourself, but you don't have to. These things are widely available now. Vinegars, there's an array of vinegars I always have in my cabinets. I love balsamic vinegar, rice vinegar, apple cider vinegar, red wine vinegar, white vinegar. There's so many different delicious vinegars and flavored vinegars that are magical. Like you could just throw those over a salad if you're in a rush and you don't have time to make your nut-based or seed-based dressing. Those are wonderful. And then there's tamari, or I like to use coconut aminos. I'm always looking for the lowest sodium versions. So my kids tend to like the coconut aminos as well. But there's so many different types as well that you can get to have. I use those as my salt or miso. That's what I tend to use in my recipes. Then there's spices and spice blends, because again, you could change the flavor of anything using a variety of spices. So if you want to, venture out and try something you haven't tried before, you find a recipe that's a little unique. Like I've been experimenting more with African spices, like a Burberry, and I had some delicious Ethiopian cuisine when I was recently in DC. And I learned about some new spices there. But once you learn about cooking that, you buy that seasoning. You can get anything online now if you can't find it at your local grocer. I go to a lot of local grocers. Like I have a Mexican grocer near me. I have a Persian market that I go to just to get some more of the more specific cuisine oriented ones. But then once you bring that spice home, then you could experiment with it, and it lasts at least a year. So it's kind of fun. You can collect all those different things and enjoy them in different ways. And then I always tend to have olives and pickles and sauerkraut and jarred jalapenos to use at the ready for different recipes. I always have jarred minced ginger and garlic in my fridge, or on my shelf if I haven't opened it yet. And then the stuff I use for sweeteners, I don't use straight up sugar. I usually use in my recipes maple syrup or date paste. So I have those stocked in my kitchen at all times. Blackstrap molasses, those are really shelf stable until you open them. Those are great too. And then the staples or foundationals, which are also things you could buy as needed. And I always have stocked in my kitchen. I always have legumes, dried legumes like peas and lentils and beans. And then of course, in the refrigerator, I always have tofu and tempeh ready to go. You could also get the aseptic tofus that are in those packages, and you could use those, have those on your stored in your pantry for a lot longer. Then canned legumes. I'm a big fan of the salt-free beans and BPA-free canned beans. I always have those, always. I use those all the time for hummus, multiple hummuses, however you would say it. And I put them in my salads. I use beans and everything because, again, legumes are one of the 6 daily threes. I always have dried whole grains in my pantry. I've got amaranth and barley and oats. Millet, quinoa, rice, the stuff we talked about earlier. Raw nuts and seeds. I always have a wide array. I actually have them. I wish you can't see them from here. Maybe you can see them. They're over there. I've got pistachios and cashews and Brazil nuts and almonds and sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds. And I just throw them in my blender and make up a dressing. And they're always right there on my counter. And then I keep chia flax and hemp seeds in my fridge. It's good to keep your nuts and seeds in the fridge and freezer, actually, if you're not going to use them quickly, because of the high fat, they will get rancid a little quicker. So that's important to consider. But having a wide variety is really important, and have them ready to go. I always have canned or jarred things like corn or water chestnuts or artichoke hearts. I use a lot of roasted red peppers in water in a jar, just because I could throw those in a really delicious dressing or sauce. They make vibrant orangey color that are delicious. I use a lot of that in my recipes as well. I always have an array of tomato products in my kitchen, like canned or jarred tomato paste. I look for the sodium free. I have all sorts of tomatoes. I like the low sodium or sodium free, either crushed or chopped, all those different types, or whole, depending on the recipe you're going to make. Tomato sauce. And I always have dry, sun-dried tomatoes, the ones in the bag without the oil. Those are really delicious. I have those in my salad that I'm going to have for lunch. Dried fruits, if you eat dried fruits, including the tomatoes or dates. Dates is a great sweetener. Dates are a great sweetener to use in recipes as well. And or date peas and date syrup, like I said before. And then shelf stable plant milks, or I have fresh plant milk in my fridge. I'm really into the cashew milk now. In terms of plant milks, I recommend the unsweetened always. And then you could do flavored depending on what you're going to use it for. But because I don't really use it as a food, I use it more of as an ingredient. I don't really drink plant milk ever. Sometimes I'll put it in my coffee or tea, but I also use it as an ingredient in sauces and dressings. So I'm really big into this cashew milk that's unsweetened and plain, but there's so many milks now. I just don't recommend coconut milk. That's the one I would use as a treat when you're making a special curry or something like that. But the coconut is high in saturated fat. And then in my freezer, I always have frozen vegetables and fruits. And yes, they are wonderful. They're not less nutritious. In fact, sometimes they're even more nutritious than the fresh, because if you think about it, from the time it's harvested, if it's flash frozen, you're going to retain the nutrients longer than if it's harvested, put on a truck, driven to a market, sitting on the shelf, waiting for you to pick it up. You pick it up, you take it home, you store it in your kitchen for a while, then you finally eat it. There's a long period of time, because as soon as it's harvested, the nutrients start to slowly degrade. Of course, it's just not getting its nutrients from the soil anymore. So frozen is a great option. Not only that, they're so convenient. Like when I travel a lot, I used to travel a lot more than now, but when I travel a lot, or anyone that travels, it's nice to come home and just, if you don't have time to go to the store the next day, or you're working right away, you could just, throw out some frozen vegetables and make a healthy meal and have your fruits and vegetables, because again, half your plate should come from fruits and vegetables. It just makes it super convenient. I have frozen mushrooms. I have frozen pre-cooked rice or quinoa in there. I have frozen oats sometimes. Sometimes I'll have some frozen sorbet or stuff like that for my kids when they visit. There's so many things you can stick in your freezer and they stay for a long period of time. So that's the way I think about how to stock your kitchen. And then same thing in terms of shopping. There are three ways to think about shopping. There is, budget shopping, there's convenient shopping, and there's a more ambitious shopping. So let's start with budget. So if you're really on a budget, which is really easy to do on a plant-based diet, here are some tips for eating on a budget, shopping on a budget. Go to those big box stores for those things that you're going to eat, like Costco or Sam's Club or Walmart or Smart and Final, and stock up on the shelf stable items like the beans or whole grains or potatoes. You can get a huge bag of potatoes for really inexpensive. Also, the convenience foods. I love to get at Costco or one of those stores bag salads, because it's so much cheaper, like the slaws that I could just throw in a bowl. That's part of my salad over there. You can just throw them in a bowl. The frozen veggies and frozen fruits, you can get these huge bags for a lot more cost effective at the box stores. So that's a great thing too. You could stock up on the dried legumes and grains and nuts and seeds at these stores as well. Just keep them in the freezer, the nuts and seeds, after you open them. Then you can go to the farmers markets, and sometimes if you go at the end of the day, you can get the better deals. That's a great way to get produce more affordably. Don't worry about organic if you're on a budget. Again, it's more important to eat the vegetables and fruits than it is to have them organic. It's better if it's organic if you can, but the benefits, all the benefits we see with eating fruits and vegetables have been studied specifically for just vegetables and fruits, not necessarily organic. So that's really important. Another way to help save money is to not shop hungry. How many of you have done that? You go to the store, you're hungry, and suddenly everything sounds good. And I'm just going to try a little this, a little that. It's so easy to get tempted. So it's better to go full and stick to your lists. I'm a big list lover. And so put your list there and stick to your list. Like tell yourself you're only going to stay on your list. That will help you stay on a budget as well. Other ways to buy on a budget is to go online. There's all these wonderful websites now where you can get foods for even more affordably, or look for the sales. There's a lot of sales. Like I love Vitacost.com is one example where you can get things on sale, where you get a discount if you buy a certain amount. That's another way to save money. Now, some people are shopping with convenience as a primary goal. And a lot of clients I work with are looking for convenience because they work full time, they're parents, they're just trying to get healthy food on the table fast. Totally respectable goal. I mean, I can relate to that. And so I help my clients do that with things like convenience thinking, like, again, frozen foods, the salads that are already chopped, like vegetables that are already chopped. You may pay a little bit more for the pre-chopped things, but that's worth it if you're trying to eat healthy. For some people, totally wonderful. Salad bars for convenience if you're eating out for lunch, or you're trying to find a healthy meal on the go. If you're traveling, salad bars can be wonderful. I'm so glad they're finally back. I miss those over all this pandemic. It's been so nice to see the salad bars come back. I'm seeing them more and more. So those are wonderful for convenience as well. Again, the canned beans, If you can't make your beans, which it's great to make them, but again, for convenience, canned is fine. Just look for the sodium-free. Jarred things, those are really great too. And then the more ambitious category means more like, if you want to go to those more specific types of stores, like I mentioned before, or if you want to go to like a Whole Foods or more of an expensive type of place, but you're going to get a lot of the collection of those healthy foods and a lot of those vegan products that you're looking for. You're going to find more at those markets. Although nowadays it's getting easier to find elsewhere. So that's just a way to think about it.